Hello students, I am back with another important chapter from your class 11's syllabus. This chapter is included in all boards. It might be state board, it might be the ICSE, or it might be the central board, because this is one of the basic, fundamental, and definitely the most important chapters related to human physiology. So we are going to discuss about human neural system, which means nervous system. So when we talk about nervous system, what impression does these two words bring to our mind? Nervous system. Automatically, the next term that comes to our mind is nerve. Right? So what is a nerve? What has a nerve got to do with our body? So our day-long activities, starting from waking up in the morning till going to bed at night, all the activities when a normal, healthy person can do in a coordinated manner, then we say that the person's nervous system is actually coordinating all his activities. Okay, so nervous system, the main function of nervous system is coordination. We can compare the role of nervous system in a human body or in any organism's body, any animal's body, with that of manager of a company. A manager has to manage all the different departments of a company. The manager has to coordinate between different departments. Same thing goes for the neural system or the nervous system. Nervous system controls the activities of different other systems that are there in the body. Not only controls, also maintains coordination. Otherwise, our activities would have been very erratic, would have been very abnormal, would have been random. So nervous system is a coordinator. Now it coordinates on the basis of two things. One is stimulus and the other one is response. So suppose right now when I'm recording this video, it's quite late at night. It's time for dinner basically. So what might happen is, while recording the video, I may feel hungry, right? So hunger, that I am feeling hungry, that hunger is a stimulus. And automatically my response would be, I'll go and I'll have my dinner, which means that will be the response, that will be the effect. Hunger was the cause and the effect was me taking my dinner. Now, how will I understand that I am hungry, first of all, in first place? Who will tell me that you are hungry? Who will tell me that you are hungry, so go and get your food, have your dinner? So these things, that means the relationship between stimulus and response. The relationship between stimulus and response is coordinated by nervous system. Suppose the weather is too humid. Okay, we are suppose sweating like anything, and we feel like once we enter the room, we feel like switching on the air conditioner. So over here, heat, high temperature is the stimulus, and automatically when our body perceives that, the response becomes, we try to have to get some cooling effect. So we switch on the AC. So we feeling uncomfortable during hot weather and switching on the AC, these two things should have a coordination. So that coordination is maintained by neural system of the body. So that's why if you see the slide, it's written over here that nervous system has got two main activities. One is coordination and the other one is integration. Coordination, coordinating whom? Two or more than two organs, so that two or three organs can interact in a coordinated way. They can deliver a function. And integration means those 2-3 organs will then behave as a unit, as a functional unit. So these things will be carried out or controlled by nervous system. So the main functions of nervous system: receiving the stimulus, stimuli, this is the plural form. Then after receiving the stimulus, I am hungry. Whether I'll have my food or I'll not have my food. So that means the stimulus will be processed by my nervous system. So what stimulus is the input. That input will be processed. So I may compare it like, suppose I am typing something on this keypad or over here in my laptop. So I am feeding something to my laptop. Understanding what the input is, accordingly the laptop will process the input. The CPU of the desktop will process the information, and accordingly an output will come. Right? So basically nervous system is the CPU. It is processing the information and then telling us how to react, how to respond, what will be the output, and then generating the output, which is response. So processing the input information and responding to the stimuli. So these are the three main functions of nervous system. Now, what is this nervous system made up of? Nervous system is basically made up of two types of cells. Two types of cells. Now, what are those two types? Let me write down. I'm writing over here. One is neuron and the other one is neuroglial cell. So one is the neuron and the other one is neuroglial cell. Okay. Most part of the nervous system is made up of millions of neurons. So that is why we say a neuron is the structural and functional unit of nervous system. So let us see how a neuron looks like. Okay, so this is the structure of a typical neuron. Now what do we get when we study the structure of a neuron? A neuron has got two main parts. This part is called the cell body. From the cell body there is a long process. Process over here means extension. So this long process is called axon. Now the membrane, since it's an animal cell, it must be having a cell membrane. So the cell membrane which covers neuron, we can also call it sometimes neurolemma, but most of the times we call it cell membrane of the neuron. Within cell membrane there will be a matrix like cytoplasm, but this time we would call it neuroplasm. So over here this orangish part that you can see surrounding the nucleus is basically neuroplasm, cytoplasm of neuron. What does it contain? It contains a nucleus. It contains some cellular organelles like it might have mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, ribosomes. These are typical of any animal cell. But what is special about neuron is, you see it's written over here, Nissl granules. Nissl granules. What are these? Nissl granules are ribonucleoproteins, which basically helps in transmission of nerve impulse from the cyton towards the axon. From the cyton towards the axon. So this is done by Nissl granules. Nissl granules will facilitate this function. Okay. Now, from the neuroplasm there is one extension, and that is called dendron. Dendron further ramifies, it spreads into branches, and the branches are called dendrites. Dendrites, their main work is to receive the nerve impulse from a previous neuron. They receive the impulse and they send it towards the cyton. That is the function. Now, from cyton, axon arises. The region from where axon arises is called axon hillock, as if it's like a small hill from where axon is originating. So we may consider this part to be axon hillock, from where axon arises. Now axon is covered by the same cell membrane, but the name will change. The name will become axolemma. Cell membrane of axon is called axolemma. Within axolemma, the fluid passes, the matrix is there also, and the matrix will be called axoplasm. So within axon, the matrix that is present is axoplasm. Now at certain intervals, axon is surrounded by certain cells which are called Schwann cell. Schwann cell. What is the function of Schwann cell? Schwann cell, they secrete a lipid kind of a substance, a fatty substance, and that is called myelin sheath. So this is myelin sheath. What is its function? In a nerve, there are thousands of nerve fibers. Nerve fiber means basically nerve fiber refers to axon. So thousands of axons all packed up together. So what may happen is, suppose one axon is carrying the information. Okay, impulse. Automatically or simultaneously rather, the adjacent neuron may get charged up, and which may result in some undesirable effect. So that is why what happens, myelin sheath covers the axon at certain intervals. At certain intervals, so that this mixing of nerve impulses between adjacent neurons cannot take place, because lipid acts as insulator. Myelin sheath is made up of lipid, and lipid is acting as an insulator. So that's why what happens? Axons do not stimulate one another. Do not let the other neurons, adjacent neurons, to get charged up, because a nerve impulse is nothing but exchange of sodium potassium ions across the axonal membrane. Nerve impulse is not like a WhatsApp message that from cyton it will go to that axon terminal. No. It is basically exchange of sodium and potassium ions across the axonal membrane. So once this takes place, then the axon, at last it divides into several branches which are called axon terminals, and each axon terminal at its end has a swollen region which is called axon bulb or synaptic bulb. Synaptic bulbs, they have certain sac-like structures which are called synaptic vesicles. Sac-like structures called synaptic vesicles which store a chemical, and that chemical is called neurotransmitter. So when the impulse from one neuron, suppose from this neuron it will pass on to the next, then those neurotransmitters are required for transmission of the nerve impulse. Okay, so this is basically the structure of a neuron. Now you can see myelin sheath is not continuous, because if it becomes continuous, entire axon will be insulated and it will not be able to transmit any nerve impulse. So at certain intervals, myelin sheath is missing, like this. Over here, myelin sheath is not there. And these discontinuities where myelin sheath is absent, such regions along the axon, these regions are called nodes of Ranvier. Nodes of Ranvier. Ranvier may be the name of the scientist who described this structure. So now there can be certain neurons where altogether myelin sheath will be absent. So neurons which have myelin sheath are called myelinated neurons or medullated nerve fibers. Neurons which do not have myelin sheath, they are called non-myelinated or non-medullated nerve fibers. So which have, they are called myelinated, which do not have, they are called non-myelinated. So this is typical structure of a neuron. Now neurons, as I told you, there are two types of cells in nervous system, neuron and neuroglial cell. So this Schwann cell is an example of neuroglial cells. Often we hear about people suffering from brain tumor. Let me tell you one thing. Tumor is a result of uncontrolled cell division. No control over cell division. Cell will keep on dividing. So a time will come when there will be a huge number of a certain type of a cell. Then that will lead to tumor. Okay? But neuron is one such cell in our body which, once we are born, they do not divide any further. That is, after we are born, whatever neurons we are born with, the number remains constant. It doesn't increase. It may decrease if there is any damage, if there is any degeneration. It may decrease, but it will not increase. Then, how come people suffer from brain tumor? Because brain is made up of neurons. But it is not only made up of neurons, it is made up of neuroglial cells also. So neuroglial cells, they can divide. After birth also they can divide. And if their division becomes uncontrolled, that may lead to tumor. Okay. So this is the basic structure of neuron. Now, based on structure, there can be certain kinds of neurons. So we are going to have a look at that. So these are the types of neurons based on structure. As you can see, the first one is called unipolar. Unipolar means there will be one cyton means cell body, and one axon. Uni means one. Okay. Then comes bipolar. Bipolar means there will be one cyton, and from one cyton there will be two processes. That means two axons. Okay, but one process, it will end in the form of dendrites. So that's why it's written over here, one axon and one dendrite. So one cell body, two processes, one process acting as or ending in the form of dendrites, and the other one ending in the form of axon. Or this also you may consider to be axon terminal. This might be dendrite. Okay. Next comes pseudo-unipolar. Pseudo, the word pseudo means false. So pseudo-unipolar means there is only one process. In bipolar there were two processes, and in pseudo-unipolar there is one process which is divided into cyton and axon. And then comes multipolar neurons, where there are several dendrites but only one axon. So we have to remember one thing. Generally dendrites are branched, axons are unbranched. Dendrites are branched processes, whereas axons are generally unbranched processes. So these are the types of neurons based on structure. Next comes neurons that are based on types of neurons based on function. Okay. So there can be three types of neurons based on function. One is the sensory neuron, which will receive the stimulus. Where are they found? They are generally found in the receptors of our body. What are receptors? Receptors are those cells in the body which receive stimulus. So generally the sense organs are the receptors. They act as receptors because we get information through 5 regions. We get information through our eyes. We get information through our ears. We get information through our nose in the form of smell. And we get information through our mouth in the form of taste. And skin in the form of touch, pain, temperature, pressure. So these are the 5 routes through which we can get information from the surroundings. So that is why these are the main receptors of the body. So from these receptors, the neurons which emerge and carry the nerve impulse are called sensory neurons. Where do they carry the nerve impulse? To either the brain or the spinal cord, because brain and spinal cord, they are the masterminds. They are there to control how the information will be processed. Now, once they reach the brain and the spinal cord, within brain and spinal cord, there is association neuron or relay neuron. Why such names? Because basically they relay the information from sensory to motor neuron. So they act as relay neurons. Not only that, they also interpret the nerve impulse. Interpret means they will try to process the information and accordingly will generate a response. After the response has been created, that will be carried by the motor neuron to the specific gland or to the specific muscle. Suppose somehow an insect bites over here. So immediately my reaction will be I'll rub my hand or do something like that. Why? Because motor neuron from my brain or from my spinal cord will carry the nerve impulse to my muscles of my hand. I can, move away my hand. If I understand that the insect is nearby, I'll move away. So for moving away, my muscles have to work. Who will instruct my muscles? Motor neurons. Who will instruct motor neurons? Brain and spinal cord. So these are the three types of neurons based on function. Okay. Now, nervous system is mainly, it can be divided into, according to location or according to structure, it can be divided into two main types. One is central nervous system. Why such a name central? Because it is aligned along the central axis of the body. This is the central axis. It is aligned over here, central axis, because it includes, you see, brain and spinal cord. So these are all along the central axis of the body. And another type is peripheral nervous system, where the nerves, they come out of the brain and reach various parts of the body. They carry the information to various parts of the body. So that is why peripheral, they are carrying the information, impulse basically, to the periphery of the human body. That means away from the center, towards the boundary, towards the periphery. So that is why the name peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, according to function, it can be of two types, somatic and autonomic. Somatic comes from the word soma. Soma means body. So basically, somatic nervous system will carry, or it will include, those nerves which will carry the impulses to the skeletal muscles of our body, those muscles which can work voluntarily, those muscles which have their which can be controlled by our own will. So voluntary activities. Autonomic nervous system will include control over glands, over certain involuntary muscles. So basically, those activities which are not under our control is under the control of autonomic nervous system. Again, autonomic nervous system is of two types, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic nervous system, the details about this, okay, I'll explain it in the next video. Let us start with the basic structure of nervous system, and that is central nervous system we will first study. So it includes the brain and the spinal cord. First we will study about brain. So brain, it can be divided into three main parts. Forebrain. Four means F-O-R-E, four. Over here, see, fore means front. So the front part of the brain is called forebrain. Midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Before going into the details of structure of brain, I would rather like to tell you one thing. Brain and spinal cord both are very important structures in our body. So they need ultra care. They need extreme kind of protection. That is why brain is encased within skull, cranium. Spinal cord remains surrounded by vertebral column, which is the spine. But even after this, below the cranium or below the vertebral column, there is a three-layered protection designed for brain and spinal cord. So that three-layered protection is called meninges. Let me show you the picture. So brain and spinal cord, they are covered by three membranes. The outermost one is dura mater. See the cursor? Below dura mater, there is arachnoid, which is another membrane. Below arachnoid, there is pia mater. Dura mater means, why such a name dura mater? Because it's durable, long lasting. Why is it long lasting? Because it is made up of fibrous tissues, fibrous connective tissues like collagen fibers may be there. Now below dura mater there is a space. In between dura mater and arachnoid there is a space which is called the subdural space. Sub means below. Arachnoid. Why such a name arachnoid? Arachnoid comes from the word arachnida. Arachnida means related to spider. It looks like a spider's web. So that is why arachnoid. So arachnoid, and below arachnoid there is again another space which is called the subarachnoid space. And below that there is pia mater. Now pia mater is a vascular layer, which means it is richly supplied with blood capillaries. So dura mater is a fibrous layer, pia mater is a vascular layer. Now this subdural space and mainly the subarachnoid space, they are not empty. A fluid is present in these spaces, and that fluid is called cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal. Why such a name? Cerebro means related to brain. Spinal means related to spinal cord. So as I told you, these three membranes, they are present over spinal cord also, which means these spaces are present over spinal cord too. And the fluid is also then present in those spaces surrounding the spinal cord. What is the function of that fluid? Cerebrospinal fluid, since it's fluid, it gives, or rather it acts as a shock absorber. If there is any mechanical damage, CSF will first absorb the shock. If it were a solid structure, this would not have been possible, because a solid structure on being hit hard would have definitely got damaged. Since it's a fluid, so it acts like a cushion. It provides a cushion-like protection to the brain and spinal cord. This is the main function. Another function is CSF, since it's a fluid, it contains certain usable materials, like it contains oxygen, it carries oxygen, nutrients, glucose, amino acids, okay, to some extent sodium, to some extent urea is also there. So CSF, it is rich in nutrients and it is rich in oxygen, because meninges of brain and spinal cord do not have any other blood supply. So that is why the CSF, it circulates this oxygen and nutrients throughout the brain. Apart from this pia mater, very little blood vessels we will find in the entire brain and spinal cord. So how will they get the nourishment? So the CSF will carry the nutrients and oxygen. Where from CSF will get the nutrients? From the pia mater. Blood. Pia mater is basically blood vessel. So from the blood vessel, from the blood, nutrients will diffuse into the fluid and then it will be carried. So this is all about CSF. So as we were talking that brain is divisible into three parts. The front part is called forebrain. So if we study the internal structure of brain, so this picture is internal structure. This entire part that the cursor is pointing to is cerebrum. Forebrain, basically it can be divided into two parts. Cerebrum, which is the major part, and diencephalon. Diencephalon in turn has three parts. So forebrain, it has cerebrum or cerebral cortex and diencephalon. Apart from that, just above the nose over here, there are two lobes which are called olfactory lobes. They help in olfaction. That is why they are just above the nose. They help in smelling. So then there is cerebrum, which is the outer part, and it covers almost the entire of brain. Other structures are below cerebrum. It acts like a, like a cap. Diencephalon, it consists of, or it includes three structures: epithalamus, thalamus, hypothalamus. Cerebrum in turn, functionally, it can be divided into lobes. Now structurally, cerebrum can be divided into two hemispheres. So let me go back to the picture. Structurally, cerebrum can be divided into two hemispheres: the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And the two hemispheres are also having a connection. So let me show you this picture. You will get an idea. Over here, this is, suppose a brain, a human brain, if it is cut longitudinally. If my brain is cut longitudinally, it will give me two halves. Two halves. So this is one half and this is another half. Each half will be called a hemisphere. And the two halves, they will not be, alienated from one another. There will be connection between the two halves. And the connection will be served by, corpus callosum. So let me go back to that picture. So this is corpus callosum, which is connecting the two cerebral hemispheres. Basically, connecting means transferring impulses from one hemisphere to the other, so that the coordination is maintained. And let me tell you one thing. Brain has got a certain degree of lateralization, which means the right side of the brain will control the left side of the body. This is my left. So right side of the brain will control the left of the body, left side of the body, and left side of the brain will control activities of the right side of the body. This is called lateralization. Why so? Because there are certain nerve fibers which crisscross. When they pass through the brain, they crisscross one another at certain regions. So that is why this lateralization exists. Okay? So this is about the cerebrum. Now you can see there are many folds and depressions in the cerebrum. So the depressions are called Singularly, they are called sulcus. Plural, sulci. And the upfolds, they are called, singularly, they are called gyrus. Plural, gyri. Why are these gyri and sulci present? Because human brain approximately weighs around 1300 grams. And it is made up of about 10 to the power 12 to 10 to the power 13 neurons. So many neurons have to be accommodated under one, in one compartment. Definitely there will be overcrowding. If there is overcrowding, then in order to accommodate the neurons, there will be folds, grooves, depressions. So that is why cerebrum is highly folded. If we stretch the cerebrum, we are going to get a vast area. Okay, so that is why this is the reason why cerebrum is folded. What are the main functions of cerebrum? For that, we need to understand the various lobes of cerebrum. So each hemisphere, each cerebral hemisphere can be divided into functional lobes. Now, what are those functional lobes? Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. Let us study a picture. Okay. So this is a lateral view of brain where different lobes are shown. So this is the frontal part of brain. Frontal means front. Frontal part of the hemisphere. Now, a little towards the back, towards this side, we have the parietal lobe. Okay, this side also we have the parietal lobe. Now, in between frontal and parietal, there is a depression. And that depression is called central sulcus. So, frontal and parietal lobes are separated or demarcated rather by central sulcus. Just behind parietal lobe, there is occipital lobe at the back over here. Occipital lobe. So, this is the occipital lobe. And above the ears, on this side and this side over here, there is temporal lobe. So, these are the main functional lobes of each cerebral hemisphere. Now, not only lobes, there are certain functional areas also. So, mainly there are three functional areas. Sensory area, association area, motor area. Almost similar to that of neurons. Sensory area will receive the impulse from the receptors. Suppose I am looking at the laptop. Light rays from my laptop screen reaching my eyes. From eyes, sensory neurons reaching my brain. So, which part of brain? Sensory area of my brain. Now, there will be association areas where it will give me, or it will help me rather, to interpret that I am viewing my laptop screen. It will help me to understand that. Not only understand that, it will also help me to store the information. Next time when I open this laptop, it would not seem to me that what is it? Okay, it will not be a new thing to me, which means association area will be associated with some kind of memory also, because we are storing the input, storing the information, and accordingly response will be generated. That is done by association area. After the response is generated, it should be elicited. So that will be done by motor area. So there are three areas in the lobes of brain: sensory, association and motor. Let us go back to the picture. So over here you see in the this precentral, this motor area. What does it do? Precentral motor area is this one. So basically since it's motor, it must be related to movement. So precentral motor area controls voluntary movements. Okay, and the post-central, this one is sensory area. The post-central sensory area, which is in the parietal lobe, it will control touch, pain, pressure. So this is a part of frontal lobe, and this post-central sensory area is a part of parietal lobe. It controls tactile, it interprets rather tactile impulses. Tactile means touch, pain, pressure, these impulses. Okay. Association area will be that area where the process will be, the information will be processed. Okay. Now premotor area. Premotor area. So premotor area, it can be voluntary activities, it will control premotor area. Now sensory area, again if I go back to that picture, wherever you find sensory areas, okay, sensory speech area, which means it will help us to understand spoken word. I am speaking now, you will be watching the video and you will be trying to understand what I am speaking. So who will do that work for you? The sensory speech area of your forebrain. Okay? Motor speech area. Suppose you are listening to my words. Suppose I am asking you something. So first you have to listen what I am asking. Then your brain will process that. Accordingly, you will also try to answer, to give a reply. Now for replying, okay, only thinking will not do. You will have to utter words. For uttering words, your facial muscles should work. For uttering words, your tongue should work. So they can be controlled by this motor speech area. Okay. Then there is an area called Wernicke's area, which helps in understanding speech and written words. Something is written. Suppose on my laptop screen I can see these are written. I will understand automatically, immediately. Who is helping me to do that? Wernicke's area. Then there is auditory area. Auditory area, which is the center for hearing. So over here you see auditory area, which helps us in hearing. And it is just located at the topmost region of temporal lobe. So this is the temporal lobe. Now frontal lobe and temporal lobe, they are demarcated by another depression, major depression, and that is lateral sulcus. So this is lateral sulcus, which demarcates the frontal lobe, parietal lobe from the temporal lobe. So temporal lobe, since it has the auditory area, so temporal lobe is meant for hearing. Okay. Then comes olfactory area. Here there is olfactory lobe. This is a part of cerebrum only. It will help us to perceive the sensation of smell. Then comes taste area. So from tongue, impulses will reach the brain. It will tell me, okay, this is bitter, this is sweet, this is spicy, this is tangy. So that will be done by the taste area. And then motor speech area, as I was showing you. Motor speech area, this is also called the Broca's area. Broca's area. Taste area is this one. See, it's written taste area. basal ganglia. Now this basal ganglia, where is it found? So basal ganglia, it is actually, ganglia means aggregation of cytons of neurons. So basal ganglia, it is scattered all over the cerebral hemisphere. Here and there, basal ganglia, they are scattered. And what is the function of basal ganglia? Function is it controls voluntary movement, it controls the reflexes to some extent, muscles which show reflex action, and controls certain automatic movements also. So basically, basal ganglia is associated with movement, some automatic movements and some voluntary movements. So that is why when this basal ganglia, if the neurons of basal ganglia start degenerating, the person suffers from Parkinson's disease. Where, if you have seen any person suffering from such a disease, the hands, okay, it will always, tremble like this. Or even the face will be, a little bit like shaking. Because the movements which were normally controlled by this area, the neurons have been affected. It's a degenerative disease. With age, the symptoms, become more prominent. So these are the different functional lobes, areas of forebrain. Now, apart from these lobes, there is another lobe, and that is the limbic lobe, limbic system. Limbic system. What is it concerned with? Limbic system is concerned with controlling our emotions, even the sexual behavior of organisms controlled by limbic system. Limbic system has two parts. One is called amygdala and the other one is called hippocampus. Let me see whether I can show you any picture of limbic system. Okay. It will take certain time because the picture is, it's opening. As I told you, it has got two parts. One is the amygdala. So over here, see, this is amygdala. Okay. And this part is hippocampus. Why such names? Amygdala, this word actually means almond. So it looks like an almond, that's why amygdala. Hippocampus means seahorse. So it looks like a seahorse. So that is why the name hippocampus. So these two structures, basically they control the emotions of a human being. They control the emotions of human being, the sexual behavior of human being, food habits also to some extent they control. Okay, so these are controlled by limbic system. So this is all about the functional lobes of cerebrum. Apart from cerebrum, there is diencephalon in the forebrain. Let us go back. Now, why such a name, diencephalon? Di means two. Encephalon means brain. So, two parts of brain. One is the thalamus and the other one is hypothalamus. Epithalamus doesn't have a very, prominent function. So, often it is not written in certain books. So, epithalamus, epi means above, then thalamus, and then hypothalamus. Hypo means below. These three together, they constitute diencephalon. So if I go back to the internal structure of brain, that picture, if we go back, so this part is basically diencephalon. Over here you see, I think it must be there. This part will be epithalamus. Okay. This one will be hypothalamus this part, and in between there will be thalamus. Okay, in between there will be thalamus. Thalamus basically acts as a relay station. It relays information from forebrain to hindbrain and from hindbrain to forebrain. So impulses from various parts of the body reaches the thalamus. Thalamus then decides where to send the impulse. Suppose we are viewing something. So thalamus will send the impulse to the occipital lobe of the brain. Occipital lobe is concerned with vision. Okay, we are having something as food. It will go to thalamus will send the impulse to the taste area. Just now I showed you. So thalamus basically acts as relay station. Hypothalamus, a very important organ of our body, a very important part of the brain. Main function of hypothalamus is it controls the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is controlled by hypothalamus. How? By certain hormones. So hypothalamus releases certain hormones which stimulate the pituitary gland so that it can function properly. Which means if somehow hypothalamus is damaged, many organs of our body will be affected, because pituitary in turn has got a control over many endocrine glands. Okay, so this is one function. Another function is hypothalamus acts as a thermostat in warm-blooded animals. It maintains a constant temperature in the warm-blooded animals, in the homeothermal animals. One more function, hypothalamus controls the sleep patterns, the waking patterns of a human being. So these are the main functions of hypothalamus. It also sometimes controls hunger and thirst. Center for hunger and thirst we will find in hypothalamus. So this is all about diencephalon. So with this we come to the end of the discussion of forebrain and its different parts. There are two more parts of brain. One is the midbrain and the other one is hindbrain, which we will be discussing in the next video. If you like this video, watch it carefully. If you have any doubts, you can write in the comment section. If you like the video, please press on the that thumbs up button and then share it so that others can also view, can also watch, and subscribe to the channel. Okay, so we'll be having the next part of discussion of brain in the next video. Thank you.